And Laura, do you hear us all well as well?
Yes, I can hear you very well. So we have already 17 people connected. So you can maybe start whenever you want. I'll start sharing the deck.
Great. Yeah, I think you can start then with the agenda.
Can you see it well?
I see it.
Great.
Great. Then I think we can probably get going. Hi, everyone. 17 participants plus panelists and speakers. Welcome to this afternoon's webinar on the EmPower project and its financing mechanism. I'm Clarice Kaler-Siebert. I'm the Executive Director at Nexus, and this is the first time, believe it or not, that I moderate a webinar. I've participated on many. I've done a lot of live moderating, but I've never done it this way. So I'm very happy that our comms guru, Anne-Laure, is hiding behind the Nexus logo. And whatever you need, you can use the chat for. I'll do the same. If you can't hear, you can't see. But I think we did a trial run and it went well. So I hope we'll be up for a technically competent couple of hours together. Before we get going, I thought I'd just say 2 sentences about Nexus for Development as we're hosting this webinar. We're a Singapore registered charitable company with foreign NGO status here in Cambodia. And for over a decade, we have been using markets, both carbon markets and financial markets, to provide access to clean energy and water solutions in Southeast Asia. We're delighted to be an implementing partner of UN Environment's EmPower project, together with the National Committee for Sub-Democratic Development Secretariat and CDDS here in Cambodia. The financing mechanism you will hear about today and hopefully participate and ask questions about is an output from this EmPower project. And UN Environment is here to provide us more information about the project. One important message, if I say one thing I want you to remember, is that we see this conversation as a sort of validation workshop. We're not presenting a final product. We're saying, this is an idea. Does it resonate with you as relevant actors in Cambodia, working with similar livelihood options and technologies and financing solutions as we're looking for solutions together? I think as panelists and speakers, it's probably useful to know a little bit about who is participating. So I think that magically, if everything works according to plan, a survey will pop up now where you can click to the best of your ability who you as participants in this webinar represent. I know from the registration, we are finance institutions, we are research and implementing partners like Nexus, we are international organizations, and we are public institutions. Is it coming up now for participants?
And it's not working according to plan. Sorry, I'm preparing that.
You know, we keep going. We have another 2 hours, so I'll go on to some housekeeping details, and if it comes up, you can vote, and if it doesn't, then our democratic right is withheld for the moment. I want to inform you that this is being recorded, and the recording will be available together with the presentations presented to everyone who is registered for this webinar. So it won't be public, but it will be accessible to those of us who are participating. There is both a chat and a Q&A panel. Please try to use them for their respective purposes. If you have a question that you want to address generally or to a specific speaker or panelist later, you can put it in the Q&A, the question and answer. If you have I can't hear or the picture is blurry type thing, please put it in the chat. I think that's it for now. I will do my best to keep time as we're going along today. I can't sort of jump up all the time like I could if I were live. So I will first try waving. If someone is presenting and doesn't see me, I'll find a pot or something and try to give a 3-minute end of year overtime warning. And I think that's it. With that, with being only 1 minute over as we get started, I will hand the proverbial microphone over to Paramita in Bangkok, I believe. She's Program Managing Officer for Renewable Energy at the UN Environment Program Regional Office. Paramita.
Thanks, Clarice, and good afternoon, everyone. We are really excited to have this first interactions with financing or microfinancing institutions. And of course, in all other countries, we have similar plans, but this is for the first time we are interacting with this very critical and relevant stakeholders. So good afternoon, everyone. And it's a pleasure and privilege to be here today, along with my colleague, Annette. So I will just briefly mention about EmPower project and the specific activities, what we are doing with Nexus and NCDDS. So EmPower is a joint project between UN Women and UNEP. And it's a 5-year program funded by CETA. So we have 3 participating countries. It's Cambodia, Bangladesh, and Vietnam. And we have one regional component for whole Asia Pacific region for knowledge sharing and capacity building. So as far as this specific component is concerned, I am not going to talk about the whole EmPower project per se, which is a huge project and have number of components and aspects or themes, but I'll briefly mention about one specific component on renewable energy and women entrepreneurship. So under that component, we have NCDDS as our partner and Nexus for Development is our partner. So thank you so very much to Vatanak, to Clarice, Bivol, and all the team member for supporting the specific activities throughout the inception and implementation of this project. So under this output, what we are trying to do is to strengthen and promote climate resilient livelihoods through renewable energy and by involving women. So our whole objective is how can we promote climate resilient livelihoods and how can we promote women entrepreneurs. So while doing that, of course, we have done lots of mapping and try to understand where the challenges are, why women entrepreneurship is not being developed or scaled up. So we found out the challenges and then we divide our thematic activities around that. So we work on policy and planning. That's where we work with NCDDS a lot. And they are the most critical partner for coming out with number of action plans and policies. So here also our objective is how can we consider the on the ground realities and learnings in the planning, in the policy process. So that's where we are working. And I know Batanak will talk more on that. So I'm not going in detail on that. The second activity is what we are focusing on is on institutional capacity building and training and capacity enhancement of women and different stakeholders. So that's our second activities. Third is, of course, creating the actual evidence on the ground by actual on the ground installations. But the fourth and the most important part is access to finance, because we know that that's the most critical component. And from the financing institutions perspective, they see it if it is a small scale renewable energy systems and that to providing loan to the women target groups, they found it as a very riskier proposition. So now the point is, when we want to promote this kind of a livelihood by using women, and when we know that access to finance is one of the most critical components, we have to find out where the barriers are. and what prevents basically the financing institution to come forward and providing access to finance to women entrepreneurs. That's why we try to understand, and that's the reason why, and that's the genesis behind carrying out these activities and this study with Nexus. And I know Miguel and the whole Nexus for Development team along with NCDDS will explain more about it, but that's the whole idea, to understand what prevents and what needs to be done. So we would like to hear more from you, from all the participants as the experts, and think of what could be the way forward for this. With this, probably I would stop. I have already 4 minutes, but at the last 1 minute, I would say thank you so very much to all of you. Without your participations, without your active or prompt response, this kind of webinar or consultation would not be possible. So we would completely rely on the national stakeholders, and based on your feedback and response, together as a community, we will see what needs to be done for Cambodia to take this kind of things forward. So looking forward for a more animated discussions later part of this session. With this, I will stop here once again on behalf of UNEP. Thank you so very much to all of you. Thank you. Looking forward. Over to you, Clarice.
Thank you, Paramita. Before we hand over to my colleague Vibal Meng, who will talk about a little bit more broadly to give us some context about the implementation of the EmPower project in Cambodia, I believe our technical problem has been solved. I see that we are 37 participants, which I think is quite good for a fairly niche webinar. So there's a question now appearing, which I will take a chance to answer as well. What best describes you? So please take a vote. And as you're doing that, if it's possible to do it seamlessly, we will hand over now to Vibal to talk about not just the financing mechanism, but everything that I'm doing.
Clarice should be to Watanak, sorry.
Sorry about Nak. Please go first. I have them reversed in my order, but NCDDS, please go ahead and explain your critical role partnering with us in implementation. Thanks.
No problem. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Clarice, and also Paramita. And foremost, I would like to express my gratitude to the Nexus for Development team for organizing this webinar. It's quite essential to the success of our EmPower project, but also to kind of link to our national policy as well. And of course, to the UNEP and UNEP team who has been giving us so much support all the way from Bangkok and also across other continents as well. And we have gained so much valuable lesson through the implementation. And of course, to the panelists who are giving us this valuable time and contribution, and especially to our participants. Hope you guys will enjoy the webinar. It's going to be quite exciting, except for my part, since I will be doing quite a policy introduction, just to give you a little bit of the background where the government is standing. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce a little bit about the climate change policy. So we know that climate change is a global issue. You know, Cambodia, like many countries, we are heavily impacted by climate change, and this includes higher temperature, frequencies, and intensity of flood, drought, and extreme weather event. Now, in the recent study in 2018 commissioned by the Ministry of Economic and Finance and the National Committee of Sustainable Development on the climate change impact on Cambodian GDP, we know that the climate change will impact our GDP by 2.5% in 2030 and also by 9.8% by 2050. So this is a challenge. It's a growing challenge at both the national level and global level. So Cambodia, in a response to this, we have joined the Paris Agreement on climate change since the early 90s. And thus, so far, we have submitted our national determined contribution, which is the NDC in 2015, and recently we have just updated our NDC in 2020 to the UN efficacy. This is our commitment from Cambodia on climate change as a country. And so we have already updated the climate change strategic plan as well for the next 5 years. And since then, the government in 2017 has already included several guidance on climate change to include in their annual budget circular. And that include in 2019, climate change has been recognized by the Ministry of Economic and Finance as a key challenges to address both in debt policy and also in the 2020 government budget. So with Line Ministry and also with NCDDS, we believe that a number of key ministry as well as national administrator have already started their integration of climate change activity and priority into their budgeting and planning process. So this is a step forward, and this is where we are taking forward for the next 10 years. But before I go a little bit more about the project itself, I'd like to introduce about our organization. So NCDDS, we are a secretariat of the interministerial mechanism for promoting democratic development at the subnational Cambodia. We've done a lot of development project through partner, and mainly is on climate change mainstreaming at the subnational level. This has been recent activity, and it continued to be a priority in our national program 10-year strategy. In this framework of national program, the NCDDS, we have a mandate to support the national administration to access climate finance and support the subnational administration to implement climate activity. And that includes supporting establishing mechanism, procedures, standard regarding climate activity. So now that the first national program 10-year has already completed, we are now starting to preparing the national program 2, which is going to spell out the country agenda for the next 10 years in terms of reform. So this is going to be 2021 and 2030. And climate change is still continue to be our strong, what we call is cross-sector thematic theme for this strategic document as well. There we will establish additional financing mechanism that aiming to narrow gap of development between urban and rural area. And we will continue to support the development of subnational infrastructure, especially those subnational entities that are considered as national economic pole, which will contribute to the national economic growth. So today, some of the achievements that we as organizations have achieved to date are namely: 1, the integration of natural resources and environment and climate change adaptation into the commune 3-year rolling investment program. 2 is the framework for management of performance-based grant from the NCDDS to the subnational administration has been introduced in 2019. 3, the implementation of climate change program and activity to subnational level since 2010. And then 4th is our accreditation to the Green Climate Fund to be a direct access entity for accessing climate finance to Cambodia. Now, this achievement has been highlighted because it's related to our climate financing, and then the program itself would be essential to what we're looking at a national level in terms of policy, in terms of how the implementation would be. And the vision for the next 10 years is that the subnational administration will have access to budget resources from both internal and external sources to match their spending obligation in quantity and type, to perform their duty in equitable and inclusive through climate investment. Now, back to our project. So the EmPower project represent a milestone for the introduction of new financing mechanism to women and women entrepreneurs in accessing climate finance for investment in renewable energy. By partnering with financing institutions, national and local government will open new opportunity for channeling global finance to local citizens while ensuring that finance access is equitable and inclusive and built on a long-term sustainable for investment. Women is the key for tackling the issue of climate change. And as a fund manager, NCDDS, we are proud to be supporting this EmPower initiative, and we are excited to participate in this wonderful webinar hosted by Nexus For Development, our partner in this project. I wish all participants well and hope that everyone will gain valuable insight from this workshop. And thank you so much for this quick introduction on climate change policy. Over to you, Clarice. Thank you.
Thank you, Vatanak. As we're handing over to Vibal, I have the results of the survey. We're quite well distributed. There's 3 to 6 representatives of each of the options. So we are 6 international institutions, 3 from the public sector, 3 from financial institutions, 5 technical providers, and 5 entrepreneurship support organizations. So that should provide for a nicely balanced conversation this afternoon, we hope. And Vibal, now it's over to you.
Okay, thank you, Clarice. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this webinar. So my name is Vibal, so I'm Technical Service Manager at Nexus. So for this today's presentation, I would like to talk about the study that Nexus has been involved with these EmPower projects for the last 2 years. So please come to next slide. Yep. So this just I would like to show you the structure of EmPower projects. As you already know that we have several partners. It's like here in the presentation, you can see that from the sponsor, there's a UN Environment Program, UN Women, and the partner we have like local partner is the NCDD, who is the fund managers. And we have also the Nexus and C Investment as the technical advisor, financial, and the training advisor. So we also, you can see there's a EmPower output. There's a lot of activity to be done here. So I mostly focus on the study that reflects in the EmPower outputs. Next. So far you see that there's at least 3 or 4 studies that EmPower have been, that Nexus have been involved in this project. First one, we did the scoping and pre-feasibility studies to try to narrow down the livelihood options and also narrow down the project size selections. Based on that study, we select a few livelihood options, namely like 5 livelihood options. And then we do the detailed technical design and financial analysis for those livelihood options. At the meantime, during this field study, we also have the financial literacy trainings. After like we do the survey, we identify the knowledge gap, mostly on the financing literacy. That's where the C investment come in to train the women who have been selected for joining these projects. So to implement this project, you can see that this project is kind of pilot one, and we expect to scaling up it. And that's where the financing mechanism study is kicked in, that it will help the project to implement and also to scaling up. Next. So this is just the summary of what we have been studying, and so far what are the state of the projects. So there are 5 livelihood options that have been selected and studied, and the location of this project implementation is only in 2 provinces, Takao and Posat. This is done through the consultation with NCDDs. We have mostly the solar related technologies like solar chicken incubation, solar for clean water supplies, and solar water pumps. So the implementation is either some only in Takao, some only in Posat, but like the individual solar water pumps is both in Takao, Posat, and the last one is the renewable energy product retail, both in Takao and Posat. In terms of cost, this one is just a reference cost, just to give you kind of how much the project costs. And also the pilot things, like for the first one, for example, solar chicken incubation, currently we might implement 1 or 2 under this pilot projects. And only, I think the solar individual water pump that have like linked to many farmers between like 40 to 80. The other only a few a few units will be installed. Next. So this is just a highlight, just show you the picture of what it look like and where is it. So like for the solar chicken incubation, currently we selecting one household there in Pocom village in Trampok commune, Trampok district in Takao. And for the solar electricity for clean water, so we select one in Popi village in Prasdok commune, Kandung district in Posak province. Next. And for the solar water pump for vegetable groups, there are like three village, 2 province, in Takao and in Posak. For in Takao we have Topang Chok village and Kampong Po village, while in Posak we have Chiriu, Salong, and Koko village in Swai Luang commune. So these are the locations. And the solar community water pump for rice cultivation in Bakan village and Tropang Chong commune, Bakan in Posak province. Next one. But is the last livelihood options, which are related to the retailer product. So as identified in our study, we want to promote the clean energy products. So under the study, we identified 3 products. First one is the clean burning briquette, is from KTC, and also the solar light. And last one is the ceramic water filter. So we did do this study, and there's 3 retailers that are interested in this livelihood option, 2 in Takao and 1 in Posak. Next. So this last slide, that as I mentioned earlier, that besides conducting the study, we also have a partnership with She Investment. They conduct the financial trainings. So we have 2 models of the training. The first one is 3-day training, mostly for the basic financing literacy, and the 8-day model training for like advanced or business development. So far, out of 6 for the 3-day basic financial training, we have completed 4. So there's 2 remaining. I think there are a lot of challenges right now, like there's COVID things that delay our trainings. For the 8-day training, we have completed 2 out of 4 model training. And I think that's what we are at the current stage. And all the study, we are at the final stage, and some have finished, and I think remain only few things to be analyzed within this few weeks. And I think that's it for my presentation. And hand over to you, Clarice. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Vibel, and also for keeping time so well. Since we have a minute, there's a quick question that's appeared in the chat for you, Vibel. Just a clarification, is it a mobile solar water pump or is it fixed?
For this technology, we open for both. It depends on the demand of the farmer. If they prefer the fixed one, we fix. But if they think that the mobile is fit with their needs, it's also available. So it's open for both actually.
Thanks, and thank you, Hugo, for using the chat to ask questions. We have a question about the questions actually, and that is whether it's possible to type in the Q&A box. If not, feel free to use the chat if you're having problems with that. All right, then the pièce de résistance, the reason we're all here. Welcome, Miguel Proenza, our former head of investments here at Nexus for Development, Miguel, has talked to many of you doing the research to put together this financing mechanism proposal. And now is your chance, Miguel, to tell us all about it. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I will try to do it the smoothest way possible, but it's quite a dense presentation. So next slide, please. Let's start with the beginning and the background. Obviously, both Paramita, Watanak, and Vibol already talked a little bit about it, but the goal was under EmPower for Nexus to develop a financing mechanism concept for scaling up EmPower's possible interventions in Cambodia. What it's important to keep in mind is that this mechanism was supposed to leverage EmPower's outcomes, engage private sectors, and be presented to a group of pre-selected financing partners, which we are currently doing. But it wasn't supposed to be used in the development of these interventions, the ones that Vibol already mentioned, or to provide any type of support for these beneficiaries to access other financing alternatives. So we can look at it as a way to promote an ecosystem to sponsor climate resilient projects developed by women-driven businesses or directly benefiting women. Next slide, please. So Vibol already talked about the baseline structure. Our goal was to look at EmPower outputs as catalytic capital to a proposed financing mechanism by focusing on the merits of the project, the technology potential to generate cash flow, the importance of working directly with the beneficiaries on the field, and the benefit of having well-informed entrepreneurs through granting financial literacy programs. From a private sector engagement standpoint, EmPower already aggregates private entrepreneurs, SMEs led by women, technical providers while producing relevant information, which would qualify as KYC and due diligence materials, as well as technical assistance through the financial literacy training included. That could be leveraged by any other private players, such as financial institutions and impact investors. Next slide, please. So under the current EmPowered structure, we have analyzed 4 different possible financing partners. We have looked at the possibility of having the local partner and CDDS as the main party intervening in this financing mechanism. Another option would be to engage with financial institutions or with technical providers, and finally to have a dedicated impact investing fund. It is important to notice that structure 2, financial institutions, could also work through engaging with technical providers, creating an additional possibility. One important note to add to all of these analyzed structures is that all are possible and could be implemented at scale. So we have focused on understanding the one that could be more efficient under an EmPower kickoff phase. Next slide, please. Now we sum up the pros and cons of each of the alternatives. When you look at the local partner, obviously it's the one with a better understanding of EmPower's reality and would allow for a more streamlined structure between the grantor and the beneficiaries. As a con, there's a lack of technical capacity and experience in managing loan portfolios, and also a potential conflict of interest because NCDDS is already the local partner and the entity responsible for managing the subsidies that are being given to these projects. When we look at financial institutions, they are highly experienced with the overall credit cycle and would also be able to provide added feedback to any structure that is being implemented. As a cons, typically these organizations are commercially driven institutions, so less willing to take risks and also have a lesser capacity or willingness to deliver tailor-made solutions. when we look at technical providers, they do have a good understanding of the field's reality and of the technology being offered. And they also have the ability to maintain a relationship throughout the life of the loan. We could add throughout the useful life of the equipment. As a cons, they lack experience in managing loans portfolios and also have limited capacity to add new lines of businesses required. And finally, for the dedicated investment fund, this would allow a close relationship with EmPower's mission and main stakeholders because it would be developed from scratch, which would always reflect a flexibility in terms of structure and credit approval processes. The cons would be these structures are lengthy and costly to set up and maintain and would bring additional burden for the EmPower structure. Next slide. We have concluded that the financing partner more ready to engage with EmPower without having to alter its structure and whose cons would be somehow mitigated by EmPower's outputs would be financial institutions. Next slide, please. Now it's time to look at the EmPower structure. The current EmPower structure envisages a subsidy to be given to the project in order to make it viable, which is to allow it to promote an interesting return to the beneficiary. It also includes an equity injection that will vary according to the beneficiary's available capital. And then if needed, a loan from, in this case, a financial institution that would potentially be backed by EmPower. Alongside with the security needed, and by security in this case we mean either the guarantee through a collateral or through a guarantor. All relevant information and studies on the beneficiaries and projects will be shared with financial institution credit teams, which we can see here through the orange arrows. It is important to note that while the subsidy is making the technical option viable, the guarantee side of the financing mechanism should act as an unblocker on any constraint faced by the borrower when accessing the loan, which is the same to say should only be used by those potential borrowers that really need this backup in order to access a loan. Next slide, please. So we have engaged with financial institutions and the keynotes from the consultation would be on the topic of guarantee. Currently, financial institutions are not providing unguaranteed loans in Cambodia, which means that all loans are either backed by collateral or by a guarantor. The credit offering varies with type and amount of the guarantee provided. All security and loan agreements are certified by commune chiefs. Heavy equipment start being accepted as collateral, but is still poorly valued. And there are some constraints in accepting movable assets, such as equipment as collateral. From a credit approval perspective, the credit approval process tends to be very streamlined, which creates some challenges when proposing more tailor-made solutions. And given that credit worthiness is based on guarantee quality, we can look at it as a gender-blind process. Here, one should mention that if the credit approval process might be considered gender-blind, the access to guarantees, either collateral or guarantors, is not, and we know that women experience more constraints than men in accessing these. In terms of renewable energy financing offering experience, most FIs have already had some sort of experience with renewable energies. They have pointed out that distributors' lack of capacity as well as lack of technical guarantee on the equipment provided and poor post-acquisition service have prevented these projects to scale. Finally, a note on regulations. There's a positive feedback on the credit bureau's provided information. Even so, all financial institutions have credit officers on the field in order to track informal loans. And by informal loans, we mean loans from family, friends, but also loans from unlicensed organizations such international NGOs, for example. But even so, the prospects are positive because even the credit bureau recognizes that is currently doing some work in order to improve the information that is being provided. Also, the participation of the community chiefs is considered essential. And an interesting note on community-based projects, they tend to deliver positive results, but only on those cases where the community already exists prior to the project, because if the community is being arranged in order to develop the project, financial institutions won't trust it as much. Next slide, please. So all of these led us to believe that we are currently in a very specific positive momentum to bring financial institutions to a more active role on impact investing. The majority of the contacted FIs has experience in working with renewable energy and women-driven businesses and have already attempted to work closely with technology providers, but their main constraints have been the ability to develop sound and strong pipelines of these relationships. Also, it's the majority of impact investing initiatives promoted by both development agencies and impact investors have aimed to prove the bankability of the projects, which has not happened, given that none of these implemented structures were as well positioned to originate, analyze, and manage credit portfolios as financial institutions are. Another interesting feature of these initiatives is the fact that these have slowly becoming risk averse, and in many cases are mimicking financial institutions' risk appetite when looking at new investment opportunities. This proposed financing mechanism suggests a different approach, assuming that bankable projects will be more attractive for other private sector players and that financial institutions' participation will act as a catalyst to further impact-driven investment. And it's also aligned with what financial institutions are currently doing, because all of them have confirmed that they are developing internal studies to understand the best approach to do more renewable energy and women-driven businesses deals. Next slide, please. So now we get to the financing mechanism. Before digging into the proposed financing mechanism, it's important to note that this will only benefit those beneficiaries who need a loan to move forward with a project and are unable to access one. So we can divide the beneficiaries or the target beneficiaries into three different categories. The ones that already have the necessary funds available to move forward with the project. The ones that need a loan but have the means to access a bank/MFI loan. And finally, the ones that need a loan but are experiencing some sort of barrier in accessing it. For these last two, the information provided by EmPower will help or would help them to go through the credit assessment made by the FI. So we can divide this financing mechanism into two different realities. We have the information flow, which is all the information and the outputs that are being provided and generated by EmPower to be used by credit risk departments in order to understand the project better. But we also have the guarantee side of the financing mechanism. When we look at this sort of guarantee side, which in this case is cash based, so we can call it the cash contribution of the financing mechanism. It operates under a two-wing approach. EmPower establishes a relationship with a financial institution under a guarantee/concessional loan scheme, and then the financial institution establishes a relationship with the borrower under a regular/subsidized loan scheme. The way this works is that a dedicated bank account would be created, funds would be transferred, and as soon as the loan is approved and that specific loan has the need for a cash collateralization, those amounts would be locked on that dedicated bank account. And the way it would function, it would be very straightforward. So when the loan is approved and given to the beneficiary, those amounts would be locked and then would be partially unlocked with the repayments of the loan. In order for this to work, the cash payments would need to be on first demand and upon delinquency or default. This mechanism is quite flexible because it allows it to operate with or without cash, with different types of guarantors, public or private, and to sponsor either directly livelihoods, as we are suggesting, or for example, technical providers. Finally, we mentioned the opportunity for financial institutions to test other types of what we call inclusive capital. As mentioned, women have less access to credits due to society tradition constraints. It would therefore be interesting to understand if financial institutions could play a role in overcoming these barriers, namely by exploring ways of welcome movable assets as collateral, especially if by removing any legal constraints, this would benefit women's access to financial markets. Start valuing forecasted revenues, which would be shown on the financial feasibility studies, and also incentivizing the concept of household assets as collateral, regardless of its ownership. So that it's clear, I will give just a quick example. Imagine a woman that asks for a loan and has no capacity of giving any type of collateral and would receive a 100% cash collateral from this financing mechanism. Even so, the recommendation would be for the financial institution to try to get other types of collateralization from that loan, either by accepting equipment as collateral or by incentivizing any household assets to be brought up into the equation. Next slide. So we are also proposing an eligibility criteria. It's a pretty straightforward one. The project would have to be eligible for EmPower. The feasibility, both technical and financial feasibility studies would need to deliver positive results. The beneficiaries would need to undergo financial literacy training or validation. And also the proposal will have to pass the credit committee approval. In order for this process to become more and more streamlined, it would be very relevant for these to communicate among themselves in order for the information that is being produced be totally used by the financial institutions, and also if the financial institutions need additional information or other type of information for that to be incorporated into the work EmPower is developing. And the final slide, please. So final remarks, the proposed financing mechanism does not sponsor directly or indirectly the project. It aims to assist. So it's contributing for this to become bankable by providing the needed collateralization. It takes advantage of financial institutions' current circumstance, namely protection mechanisms, which we understand act as incentives for borrowers to repay the loans, the classic example is the reporting to the credit bureau. We do understand that this is known by the borrowers, and if they have to choose between a formal loan with an MFI and an informal loan, they will always choose to repay the formal loan due to the pressure that exists. And also it's a flexible structure, allows it to be cash or non-cash, and also it can be adapted to other purposes. One relevant note, this financing mechanism is still lacking an expert opinion on its legal, accounting and tax matters or constraints. Nonetheless, we believe that this might be the relevant time to ask if are Cambodian financial institutions ready to be the next impact investing catalyst. Thank you. This has been a journey. Did I comply with the timing?
Brilliant. We are even ahead of schedule. That's great. Thank you, Miguel and everyone. Yeah, you packed a lot of information into 27 minutes or whatever it was. I don't see anything in the written Q&A at this point. Here comes something in the chat. I'll take the chance to read it up. I'll just also take the chance to mention to all the participants, if you want to speak, I think you can request the floor from Anne-Laure, and you can also ask your question out loud if you prefer. Here in the chat, it says, Miguel, you mentioned renewable energy providers are lacking capacity. Could you please give some examples to be more precise?
Well, I don't know if I can give more examples than the feedback that we have received from financial institutions. But one of the reasons, and what I mentioned was that financial institutions have already engaged with technical providers. And when they talk about the feedback and why these projects weren't able to scale further, they do mention distribution issues and post-service capacity. So I'm just a vehicle here transmitting information that I've received.
Hello.
Boon, go ahead, please.
Yeah. I'm Boon from AODB. I have a question regarding movable asset, like for example, solar panel, like consider to be as a collateral. But the bank for AODB, we can accept as collateral unless like it has a guarantee buying back from the panel supplier, because this issue I have discussed with with Nexus before, as a possibly like to find a supplier, solar supplier as a partner. They can buy those material, I mean solar panel back from farmer, and then the bank consider as a collateral. Okay, that's it. That's all my question.
Miguel, do you want to respond? Are you able
Yes,
to respond?
Of course. Well, our understanding is that it's not very common. Based on recent conversations, we know that it's very difficult to access movable assets. And I believe that the real discussion that one should have, and when we talk about movable assets, we aren't just talking about the equipment, we are talking about motorbikes, ultimately refrigerators, any other type of assets that one borrower might have. And the interesting thing to explore, and it sort of is the segue to what Paramita was saying. It is very important to identify the barriers that are preventing women from accessing loans, for instance. And we do understand that movable assets are still an issue. There are still some difficulties in how to value these, how to access in case of delinquency or default. So taking advantage of this forum to talk about movable assets is to really understand if there was a more straightforward way to access these under a default or delinquent circumstance, if this would be beneficial for women to access a loan. And at the end of the day, the answer might be no, but we decided to raise this question because we do understand that financial institutions have many constraints with accepting movable assets, just by the fact, if nothing else, that these are movable. So even if they are able to go there and collect the assets might not be there, and that's a risk. So it's just trying to understand if this would make a difference and if in any way this is a barrier preventing women from accessing loans.
Thank you both. There are questions coming in both the question and the chat field. I will do my best to relay some of these. From Hugo Agostino to Miguel, if there are technical providers of renewable energy products that are enrolled in a project that aims to improve their after-sales services, do you think that it would be a reason for financial institutions to engage with these technical providers? And then he continues, meaning that a technical provider of renewable energy products being able to guarantee the functionality of the equipment through the lifespan of the loan. It would be a kind of guarantee for the financial institution that the loan would be repaid. Sounds familiar. Go ahead, Miguel.
It does sound familiar. I would definitely say that the answer is yes, and I'm probably not the person to be asked that question. But yes, I think that if financial institutions already have experience with technical providers, they will be the best ones to say what did they lack in the past that prevent them to scale up. But we do understand that other programs and other projects are being currently developed in Cambodia, and yes, and these might be very positive, and it's important to work alongside financial institutions. So the answer would be yes.
Thanks, to which Hugo says we need to talk. So we'll let that connection be made offline after this. Thanks everyone for making this interactive. Here comes one more, dear Miguel. How are financial institutions able to provide a loan to project's beneficiaries while the project just has the dedicated savings account at financial institutions for the guarantee?
Could you please repeat that, or maybe I should?
Maybe, Sita, do you want to ask the question yourself?
Oh, okay.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry. Actually, this question is refer about the project plan to have the financing scheme that just open and dedicated saving account at one MFI or many MFI, I'm not sure. And then the MFI may be able to provide loan by using other fund source. So at that time, just my concern how the FI is able to get other fund source to provide loan to the project beneficiary, while the project just only place the fund at the MFI without allow MFI to use it because it's just the saving account. Thank you.
Yes, that's one of the characteristics of this financing mechanism. So the financing mechanism is not providing any type of financing or loan to MFIs. So MFIs are expected to use their own funds and to use their own sources of financing to sponsor these projects. The only thing this financing mechanism is allowing MFIs to do is to be fully backed in those cases where there's no additional collateral to be given. So basically, what I'm saying is that MFIs will continue to do what they already do with the resources they already have. And this financing mechanism would be just backing these projects or the parts of these projects that needs some additional collateral. So to make it clear, there's no direct financing to the financial institution.
Thank you.
Thanks. Is this a direct follow-up? We have somebody else in queue, but I'll let you come in if it's a direct follow-up.
Hello.
Yes, is your question directly following on the former one, or is it something new?
I just want to clarify on, the saving account as considered as collateral. For AODB, we have can provide loan and we consider like restricted deposit as collateral in the EmPower project. If EmPower project has saving account or restricted account at ODB, we can offer loan based on 200% on the restricted amount. That if we have a mechanism support beneficiary, we understand that currently most smallholder farmer in that nest, lack of collateral for access credit from financial institution. That's why AODB have support through like deposit, consider deposit as collateral. We can offer like 200% on the deposit amount. Okay.
Thanks. Miguel, did you want to respond in any way before we go on? Okay. Then Samnang War, the floor is yours. It looks like you were able to unmute yourself. Please go ahead.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. It is very, very interesting webinar I've met. Thank you for the presenters. Since I observe, I see this project is a complicity of addressing to women as the target, using renewable energy technology for climate change, making profit and sustainable income generation of the target women. And there's so many people involved. I mean, it is very, very good. One of things is that we see we specify the target of only women, not all other entrepreneurs, but women as entrepreneurs. So it is already one criteria that the project has specified. And only using renewable energy to make profit, not to use any other energy which are not sustainable, but sustainable energy technology to make profit. And the profit is just show that it has to be sustainable. So it is a lot of benefit going to the different sides. As experienced within the Ministry of Agriculture, Fishery and Forestry, we see that within almost 4.5 years, we tested the renewable technology for agriculture production, processing, and post-harvesting. We are learning a lot from farmers as well as from the technology providers. So because we getting fund from development partner, and then we have to work with smallholder farmer. If it would be much easier if we are opening for other stakeholders, not only poorest of the poor, to generate income, to use this high cost technology for income. But we have to work through the smallest farmer holder. So this is already difficult. Why it is not for open to any other producer, not smallholder farmer. That's That is a question from other side. Some people say, okay, I am able to invest solar edge incubator for 1,000 hatching, but if your target is only for small farmers, you know, this is a barriers that the number of units has not fast installation. And number two is that the technology is, you see, if you are knocking the door of the farmer, say, hey, change your energy sources by putting solar instead of putting plug into the electricity grid. They say, hey, how much? Well, it's very expensive to invest at the upfront. So I am not able to pay in once, but I rather pay maybe monthly electricity bill because of the inability to invest at one time. So I see Prasad here, I see AODB here. My question would go straight to you guys from the microfinancial institution. Why are you interested to work with the poorest of the poor with this technology, renewable energy technology? This is to microfinance. Number two is that I would like to clarify to Michael. You mentioned about the incapacity of the REITs provider, technology provider. Many people still keep confusing that if they are going to buy solar water pump, their income may be better, which is wrong. Solar water pump is just to give the water enough to farmer. It doesn't mean solar water pump will help them to produce good vegetable. So people still misunderstand that they have portable solar pump at their garden and they're waiting for a good vegetable. Solar pump is just providing water. The second thing is that edge incubator. Many REIT providers, they are good in solar and electricity system, incubator and solar power, but they are not good in chick production. They are not good in chick raising, vaccination and care, so on. So technology itself is not good enough to provide a good output. So when we are talking about the renewable energy technology, don't forget to attach with a very special expert in type of inventory, chick specialist, for example, vegetable specialist. So that is it from my side. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Samnang War. And just, I should have asked people who aren't affiliated to explain where they're coming from. I believe that you are working with SRET, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thanks. So the question that was addressed to the finance institutions about why choose to work with the poorest of the poor, maybe we put that in the box that we take to the panel when we have a discussion later. For now, the question about the role of the technologies, I don't know if Miguel or maybe even Vibal, you have anything to say about that?
The only thing I have to say about that before the technical person speaks is that I'm not sure if that's entirely true. I wouldn't say that a solar water pump is less efficient or produces less water than a diesel-based water pump. I think that people need to know how to use it. Obviously, it brings out additional questions such as water storage. It also allows it to be used with batteries, which increases the efficiency. But the question is, and what gathers us here is a commitment with climate change. And what we do know is that climate won't change if these initiatives don't move forward. So it's not about discussing the quality or the capacity and constantly comparing it with diesel-based options, but also engage in a more green way of doing things, and obviously, and in order to do that, renewable energies need to be brought up to the equation.
Okay, thanks. Vibal, did you want to say anything, or shall we keep going?
Yes, just one quick point. It's not just to discuss that actually what in our pilot project we are aware of that this one, the technology itself is not, I mean, it's about like teaching them how to take care of the chipware. That's why we are working with those who have experience already, or is already under the EM program or Aspire program. They already have the technical in agriculture already. So this one is just switching from the conventional one to the renewable energy part. So we are not choosing like someone that doesn't have technical experience in doing that agriculture business. Yes, only that. Over to you, Clary.
Okay, thank you, Vibal. We're starting to run out of time for our Q&A. There'll be more opportunity to engage. I'll give the floor maybe last now to Cécile Daume from, I suppose, what we might call a sister initiative of sorts working in the same space. Please go, oops, sorry, with your intervention or question, Cécile.
Okay, thank you very much, Clarisse, and hi, everyone. Really happy to have, I'll take just a few minutes of your time and to have the opportunity here to present one of the sister projects from this EmPower project. I'll just share my screen quickly so that I can, wait. Make the presentation. Is it okay? Is everyone seeing it?
Yeah,
correct?
It's good. Go ahead. Perfect.
Okay. So, like I was saying, with Sevea and Samnang discussed quickly, we've been involved during these past few years with SRED project. So the difficulty of bringing renewable energy technologies for agricultural productive usage and the difficulty of the financing solutions for that, we've seen that really. And since last year, this Switch to Solar initiative was launched. It's EU funded. It's EU and the Czech Republic funded. It's a consortium between People in Need, Sevea Energy Lab. And the idea is really to build on all this initiative that have been happening these last years to have solar used for a thriving agri-fishery sector. So it will be a 4-year project and it will be around the Tonlesap area. The objective of this project will be to try to bring added value to the agri-fishery market by supporting the uptake of solar solutions. The reason why this is tricky and jumping a little bit on what Samnang was saying is that we are still at a relatively early stage here in Cambodia on a lot of aspects. Productive usage in agricultural sector itself, it's quite early stage in Cambodia. When you come and add renewable energy technology solutions that have specific characteristic and constraints, because they have a lot of benefits, but they present also some constraints, then you enter into a market that is very difficult. I think that there are a lot of financial institutions that have been trying to develop new products. The problem is being aware of those products for the financial institutions to have access to a pipeline of financeable, sorry for that, for a financeable product. The happiness of working from home, COVID. So basically, we've switched what we'll be working on, we'll be trying to provide this market analysis, identification of appropriate solar technologies to FIs, to solar providers, to agribusinesses, because as we were saying, it doesn't mean it's two different expertise. Energy expertise, it's not the same expertise as agri and fishery expertise, and it's very difficult to combine the both. So having partnership, we really believe in this, and the same for FIs. The idea is to bring all this working together and exchanging information and doing small pilot projects to be able to learn how to move forward. So we'll be working with around 9,000, trying 9,000 agri-fishery SMEs, some solar technology providers, but also agribusinesses, financial intermediaries, and then university students and startups to have new projects arising. Technologies, they are more or less the same because we are still in, as I was saying, in a not so developed market in terms of productive usage in Cambodia. It's usually the same technology that you are seeing, but some that we might also be pushing for will be the cricket incubators, all technologies around cooling, cold storage, and some smart appliances, relatively small, like sensors and things like this. And just to finalize, what I wanted to say is that financing, when we talk about financing, we actually have two very different components. One is end user financing, and so how people are able to purchase the technology. But the other one, and one which I think is critical here also in Cambodia, it's financing the companies themselves. So the technology providers themselves, all this partnership between an agribusiness and a technology company. These SMEs also need some financing and some support so that they can grow and they are able to provide more a better pipeline of projects to the FIs. Because right now that's the issue. Even if there are partnerships, there is one project here coming, one project here coming, and so there is little leverage and economies of scales that can be done into this financing. It's a tailor, one project per one project, you need to tailor it. And I think there is a lot of work that needs to be done with the STP, the solar technology providers and the agribusiness themselves, so that they can really develop themselves and build a market that can then be financed by the financial institution. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present this Switch to Solar initiative. And of course, I'll be coming back to most of the actors that are present here. And of course, trying to see how, if EmPower was to scale up, how we can combine this, because all initiatives are needed if we want to see this market develop itself. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Cecile. So we see we are many in Cambodia with finding similar technology solutions, facing similar financing challenges. We're all looking for sustainable solutions so we can continue to share, and I understand there will be a series of conversations on similar topics moving forward, so we can continue to share ideas. For now, I'm going to close the Q&A. I don't see any more questions and in the chats, and we will move on to our panel discussion. But before we do that, we've all been sitting here for an hour already. If we were all in a room, I think I would make everybody stand up. And your screens are now blocked to me, so I don't know if you're actually doing it. So please don't make me be ridiculous standing here by myself, but stand up and stretch a little bit. When in Sweden, where I've normally for the last years moderated things, we always stand up and pick apples, which is ridiculous to do in a place where we don't have apples. But I don't know, think of some mangoes or something, or watermelons grow down on the ground. You can pick them up. Just do something to get some energy. Okay, thank you. Now here we go. We move on to our panel, the idea here is to consider the financing model that Miguel has devised and presented. We ask the question, are Cambodian financial institutions ready to be the next impact investing catalysts? And we have here, I hope everyone can see this slide, our panelists. I have to point out, I didn't really notice it until we had our coordination call, that ironically for a project that's about empowering women, we brought together the major actors who are coordinating and contributing to the project. And we've almost put together a male-only panel. Cecilia, thank you for being there as the sole woman on the panel. It's actually, I guess I have the power, so maybe I constitute two women because I can take and move the parole, but I think we'll have a good discussion despite the lack of gender balance. So to kick it off, I am going to ask a question, the same question of all the panelists, and that is really to give first reactions to the financing mechanism just proposed. What opportunities and challenges do you foresee in implementing a mechanism like this? And when you make your intervention, I'll ask you to, I'm limiting it to 2 minutes each. So I'll cut you off after 2 minutes and go on to the next person, but please in your 2 minutes also introduce who you are. Say your name and what you represent, and 3 words if you want to explain what your institution or organization does. So first reactions to the financing mechanism. Does somebody want to kick it off, or should I just call names based on what I see on my screen? Patana, go ahead.
All right, I'll go first then. Thank you so much, Clarice, for the question. Obviously, we are here today because this project is quite essential. You know, it's in some ways quite pioneering in terms of Cambodian landscape in the financial sector. And this is the very first time that the public sector is involved initiating such collaborations. And we can feel that there are good supports from the private sector. And there are some challenges that we see in terms of policymaker. Currently, if we look at the local government, what I mean is the communal district level, they not yet have any mandate in terms of to partner with any private sector yet, especially with financial institutions. So that could be quite a challenge. But with that in mind, the government already put it into an agenda to help and then push the public-private partnership further the next 10 years. But at a national level, there are a number of actors who are involved in the PPP engagement. So you have a number of sectors in energy sector, as well as transportations and housing. And specifically now in climate change, we, NCDDS, is pioneering this mechanism. So we feel that through the pilot and the implementation that we are starting here, I think this will propel some of the lesson learned and experience that will be adopted to the local government. So we hope that the challenges that we present today would not be a challenges in the next 5 or 10 years, but it will be a solution forward. So ultimately, financing mechanism that are proposing today will build path for that forward. And we're excited to be part of this pioneer, and then looking forward to supporting and partnership with the financial institution. And then obviously we are opening to everyone to engage us. We already have a good conversation with RDB, but definitely we'll look forward to engaging with other MFI as well. All right. Thank you so much for the question.
Thank you. Next, do we have a volunteer? Yannick, maybe you want to go?
Sure, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me. Okay, 2 minutes. So briefly, I'm from Chamran. We're a social microfinance institution. We've been in Cambodia for about 14 years. So our target market consists of around 80% women. We have the lowest average loan size in the market at around $700. And our focus is primarily on productive uses. And then more generally on impact lending, so that, for example, for WASH financing, agri-financing, energy, water. And so in those sectors, we have a little bit of exposure in the more like SME space. Yeah, so to go to the question more specifically in terms of the mechanism proposed, I think that first of all, we've been trying to develop products and projects to finance renewable energies in the agricultural space more generally over the past, let's say, 5 years. And I think that in terms of the barriers for accessing those products, the financing hasn't been one of the main issues. The main issues that our borrowers have in accessing these products is the access to the products rather than the access to the financing. And that's, of course, our borrowers are already microfinance borrowers, so they would have had the capacity to access the microfinance loan. But supposing those that don't have it, it's a very, there are lots of options in Cambodia for accessing financing. I think that the main concern is going to be for the larger technologies that are being proposed. So you mentioned, for example, the community water pumps and maybe the clean water supplies. For those, I think definitely there's an issue of collateral. And that issue, you're proposing some kind of guarantee mechanism. And I think that would go a long way to help MFIs provide financing. And at least, using that security as a way to make the access to the financing, the eligibility criteria easier, but also to reduce the pricing and ensuring that these products can be accessed at cheaper prices. Beyond that, our main issues have been to try to find technology providers, as described by Cecile, who have the capacity to do that last mile. And the Green Microfinance Program, I think that we all have in mind, was a good example of that, where, for example, there was a question asked about after-sales services. If we built the capacity of those, then yes, great to do that, but it's very costly for those companies to get the scale and the capacity to develop all these extra services. So the problem is actually the pipeline for us to deliver that. And that's why we'd be interested in looking at projects that actually focus upstream, focusing on those SMEs, building their capacities to do that last mile a bit more effectively. I think my 2 minutes are up, so I'll stop here.
Thank you. Bun, you're next on my screen. Do you want to go?
Yeah. Thank you so much for. Okay, I'm so glad to join your webinar here today. So I'm Bun again, like Director of the Credit Department from AODB, Agriculture and Rural Development Bank, a state-owned bank, policy bank, that we have a prior. Primary, the bank mission is the primary purpose for fulfilling the significant role in development the agriculture sector and rural area of Cambodia. And we are, the AODB are not like profit orientation, mainly like for social mission. And for challenges for implementation in the EmPower project, that is, we observe that most of the smallholder farmer in rural area are lack of collateral in debt. We understand that about this condition, and that is the barrier for accessing additional loan from my financial institution. Yeah, that is the point that's why AODB developed a policy, a small loan policy that we can accept to find a grantor that is accept deposit as collateral. It's not like deposit from the individual farmer, but we can accept a deposit from the project or from a grantor. That is, we can promote access to credit from a smallholder farmer. That is AODB, implement our various projects like for support agriculture development mainly in rural sector. And we also work with AIM project, Aspire as well, because AIM and Aspire is a sister and brother under IFAD project. Yeah. So that we for solving this increasing access to credit, we also developed, clean loan base from 500 to 5,000 USD. We can accept, based on a strong, good financial condition of individual farmer, and then from a linkage from producer to the market, more linkage, in the value chain supporting. So we can consider like providing loan without collateral for interest rate, like we are leading providing loans with lower rate than industry average for AODB. And before AODB, like our portfolio mainly support for rice sector. More than 80% of our portfolio supporting rice sector, but now we also diversify to non-rice sector as well, for vegetable, animal raising, and so on, for support rural development as well. Okay, that's it from my my side. And if you have any question, I can. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Celia, do you want to go? Opportunities, challenges in implementing a mechanism like what Miguel has presented.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me today. So very briefly to introduce She Investments. We are a business incubator and accelerator for Cambodian women. We launched in 2015 and have since graduated over 300 women from incubator accelerator programs and connected around 50 women-led enterprises to around $500,000 US to date. So on this particular financing mechanism, I think, as a high-level summary, to me, it looks good. I think it's definitely a conversation that needs to happen. I think collaboration between public and private sectors in particular is extremely important. And from my perspective, a lot of the success of a mechanism like this also relies on the selection of the right entrepreneurs and the right enterprises that you want to include in the program. So as well as providing them with the right kind of support that enables them to not only access financial capital, but effectively manage those opportunities. So links to finance is certainly important. However, enabling entrepreneurs to have effective financial and business management alongside that capital and applying a gender lens to that in particular, that support is really essential to make it successful in my view.
Thank you. Who hasn't spoken? Sita, do you want to take a turn?
Yes, thank you very much, and thanks for the presentation, the whole project as well, and also share with us the proposed financial scheme for the project. Actually, we learned very well from the presentation, but hope we can go in deep on that. What is the way that it will be going forward? So before discussion, let me introduce myself a little bit. I'm Pensawan Soksita from Prasa. And I think most of you might know Prasa well. Currently, we have more than $3 billion in total asset. And we lend to people with nearly 86% of the total village in Cambodia, with the more than 80% are women currently. And we have diversified and various not only bank loan product but also banking service that we can serve the people by having the digital product to allow them to access from their home by using mobile phone with Prasa, or can be with the new app which is developed by the central bank we call Bakong app, so that they can use not only make other transaction but also for the loan repayment and so on. So that this kind of thing we have in place in order to build along with the COVID situation currently. For the project, I think it might be great that I already say at the beginning that we know the profile of the project. Somehow we might be have some challenge, as I already raised, in terms of the guarantee scheme, because we might need to find another type of fund from the investor or any lender that willing to loan us, and then we can use such kind of fund for lending to the project beneficiary. In terms of the lending to the community, I think it is another challenge also, that we just only lend to the household currently, or we can say the SME, but those SME owned by the individual one, not the entity body. So that it might be a challenge if the project has such kind of thing to lend on. With the amount of 30,000 US dollars, I think, as I hear from the project side. And for the loan, I think it's okay with us, because currently we can lend up to $500,000 US with the tenure of 10 years. So more or less, the client really easy to accept the lower rate compared to the informal money lender. So we might be talking in detail later, I think, how the process or procedure of the project might be, and how we can cooperate on that. Thank you.
Thanks. Miguel, do you want to tackle this too?
Yes, I think I will be mostly echoing some of the things that were said. The first one, I believe that this financing mechanism acts as an incentive to work with financial institutions prior to any scale recognition, and to bring them from start to the process, which is something interesting, especially when we look at all of impact investing models that aim to reach a stage where companies and entrepreneurs are able to access credit. So that becomes our starting point. That's a positive thing. The other thing, echoing Watanak, I think there's an unique opportunity to truly engage public and private sectors. The public sector is the sector able to promote change more efficiently, and it's important that this dialogue continues, and EmPower promotes that from scratch. Also echoing what Celia was saying, and it's important to focus on the ability of the project to be managed proper, but also to generate wealth, and that comes from good business practices. And ultimately, and finally, the flexibility, because it's a really flexible mechanism that allows other types of entrepreneurs, from private investors to technical providers, to join in and to develop it further. So I would stop here.
Thanks. If I'm not mistaken, we've made the round of the panel. So now we've all been introduced to each other. I should maybe mention to the broader audience, when we did a coordination call and started to discuss the issues, it really started to go of itself. So maybe I can just check out and go take a coffee and let these folks speak amongst themselves. But I'm going to throw in one more question at least, and then please feel free to interact. And I'm still monitoring the chat if anybody wants to come in from the floor. But I want to go to the fact that this mechanism has emphasized financial literacy. And that's a role that Celia and She Investments has played in the project. Maybe you want to describe it a little bit more, Celia, what you've provided in terms of training and how it's been received. But I'll ask you first, is this unique? And what have you observed? How has this financial literacy training helped? What has been challenging? And then I open it also up to the financial institutions, anyone else. What role can this play in the future? Is it something that has been used widely? What is your experience and how do you look on it in terms of facilitating the success of a mechanism like this? So Celia, I give it first to you.
Sure, thank you. So, I mean, from our perspective, financial literacy is absolutely crucial for this kind of project, for any kind of project. Every single program that we would run, whether it's an accelerator, incubator, pure, like even a short business training program, they would all include financial literacy as one of the core components of that program. And so in this case, we're focusing purely on financial literacy for the largest part of the part of the program that we're involved in. And I think, you know, it's so important for two reasons. One is the genuine need, but the second is through our work, it's where we see things really start to shift within a household and within the business itself, is through that financial literacy training. So the majority of women that we work with, including the 200 plus women that are involved in this project across the two provinces, the majority of them are already in debt. Many of them are in debt several times over, and whether that's formal or informal debt. And the financial literacy skills that we're seeing out in Takao and Pasat provinces are extremely low. Lower than what we actually expected going in. So after the first group workshop, we actually had to completely redesign the program very quickly and redevelop all of the curriculum because we just weren't expecting the financial literacy levels to be quite as low as they were. So, you know, we need to build skills that enable people to really understand things like debt, like really understand it before they get themselves into that situation, if they're going to be at a capacity where they can repay and be a good client. And one really key thing, if we're talking about entrepreneurs as well, is that a really key barrier when it comes to women in particular is that the majority of enterprises that we're talking about are typically family enterprises, and it can be quite unclear as to who is really managing the money and who has the decision-making power over that money. But because they're family enterprises, most of them are also not separating the household money and the business money, and that can become quite complicated, and that's quite a challenge that they need to overcome. So a lot of that financial literacy training, it needs to be focused on both household and the business, and importantly separating those things. And I suppose, you know, this program is called the EmPower program. It implies that alongside access to clean energy and alongside access to finance, we also need to ensure that we're addressing women's financial literacy and their financial empowerment. And that means, you know, empowerment is having decision-making power. So it needs to be a very key part of any project when it comes to working with women and money, including this kind of intervention. So.
Thanks. Does anyone else want to come in there? I'm a bit curious. We stray a bit from the specifics, but is basic financial literacy or training for it a criterion for taking a loan anywhere in any circumstance? would it be an interesting criterion?
Can I step in on that one? Or is it, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so we have a number of programs where we incorporate financial literacy to the loan process. And I mean, there's no area of disagreement at all with Celia about financial literacy is important in all provision of financial services. And there are a lot of public initiatives that are working to address that through partnerships with the Ministry of Education, through partnerships with communications channel, and of course through financial service providers who are there, offering the debt and well placed to also provide the right information to the borrowers about the risks that these borrowers face in taking loans. So that it's absolutely critical. Historically in Cambodia, that was very much part of the process where we're going back 10 years, there were group meetings and people would come together and they would have trainings and then they would access loans. So that was very much the landscape in Cambodia. As things developed and the sector became a bit more commercial, but also the experience in having loans became a bit more widespread. I think access to finance is generally widespread, and as mentioned, people in the project, most had loans already. I've worked with many NGOs who say, let's partner, but our population is very poor, they don't have access to finance. I said, well, let's see. And then when we checked the CDC reports, they've all taken numerous loans. So it's very important that doesn't mean that they're taking it responsibly though. So it's very important to emphasize financial literacy, but giving financial literacy as a condition to accessing a loan, I don't think makes sense. So it needs to be integrated to the loan process. It could be done after, in the life cycle of the loan. Why not in some particular cases with particularly vulnerable groups who maybe for some reason haven't accessed finance. So for example, people with disabilities and these types of profiles, it's good to build that before. But generally speaking, people will not be well receptive, and we've tried to say, okay, you need to have a 2-week program before you access the loan. They're going to go get it somewhere else, clearly and quickly. So it's very important that MFIs find and other actors in partnership find ways to innovate to get that message of responsible borrowing across. And it is our responsibility to do that.
Thanks. Thanks a lot. Sita, did you want to speak?
Yes, would like to share to the webinar also. Actually, we experience in providing the financial literacy or financial education to our borrower in the past. However, the trend has been changed very quick from that, because borrower just think that they just want a loan. They don't want any knowledge on that. Somehow we see that they might be used loan in the wrong way in case they did not get any idea on how to use loan and so on. So we turn our way by just giving a consultation between our credit officer and our borrower in offering just only a tip on financial literacy, not really a financial literacy. And we partner with various institutions like the Central Bank or National Bank of Cambodia. They produce the Let's Talk About Money. They have many campaigns within the Cambodia. Before COVID come, they conduct various events in order to promote such kind of this literacy to the people. For us, in order to participate in building the mindset of our borrower and non-borrower, we also produce a digital one, so that we just offering the key message to the non-client via the social media, can be Facebook, can be Telegram, and so on. So those kind of things, we do hope that they will read and they will think, they will interact with us through the social media, so that we are able to build the way that they think on how to use loan and how to save and so on. For the project side, I think I would recommend that maybe the project can offer the training. At the same time, in case there is a need from the presentation of the president of the MFI to do the presentation, I think there might be a loop that may be happen in the future, that we might be allow our people at the brand level to give some sort of the loan calculation, something, or how to compare with other bank before they decide to have a loan with one of the MFI or bank, because this way will be helpful for them to decide before getting a loan. And moreover, they might be able to differentiate between the purpose of use, because in practice, if we just limit them to just get a loan of 1,000 for purchasing any solar item or product, and then they will say no, they need a bulk amount so that they can manage it by themselves and so on. So this is also that we might be build their knowledge by providing this kind of knowledge to them before they decide to have a loan with any bank or MFI. Thank you.
Thanks. Any reactions from within the panel before I ask turn to the floor? Yeah, Mr. Go ahead.
I would like to share, a ODB experience regarding financial literacy. Okay, besides including like financial literacy is we also provide some support like know-how. I mean business model development, mainly for rural sector like backyard chicken production is good for the market. I mean and the market coordination as well. So for smallholder farmer, that is for example safe vegetable production in a rural area, they want to invest in greenhouse like small scale, I mean below 5,000 USD. At the first time, they fear that it's bad investment. How can they gonna do? And then we can bring a farmer from one side, for example, from Battambang to see like successful farmer in Bonti Minjay, to see that it's a small scale, I mean greenhouse in Bonti Minjay. Then they surprised that it's a small investment like 3 or below 5,000, and then they can pay back like around 2-year payback period to pay to the bank. And then we also bring like for market coordination, we also bring like main buyer from Phnom Penh or from some provinces to make contract farming with those producer. That is the way that is can help like farmer a lot. Beside also include the financial literacy, but it's a business model development and market coordination is the best. Like for safe vegetable production is high demand in the market, and chicken business is good. That's why these are two. It's not two main commodity, but other commodity as well that we also include in financial literacy. And we also cooperated with ADB for provide like training of trainer like for cooperative. One is financial literacy for cooperative member, and the other like business development, business management as well for cooperative management level. Okay.
Thanks. Now we've sort of zoomed in on financial literacy, which is an important part of this model, but there is more. So I'm going to open it up, maybe throw out a few questions at once. Hugo, you've asked to ask a question. If you can unmute yourself, please go ahead. Hugo from People in Need, are you there?
Hey, hello. Hello, everyone. It's been a very nice panel discussion. I really don't have a very specific question, and the questions I had was already done, and I was, since we are partners with Sevilla, with Cecile, who was presenting on Switch to Solar. And really my questions were more related with the fact of how finance institutions will definitely trust in the technology providers. And if it would be a reason for them to accept it as a collateral of giving finance to micro and small enterprises in the agri-fisheries sector. And that's one of the aims of our project is exactly that. It's to develop the sales network of these companies, and also to help them to develop a strong after-sales service in order first for the agriculturists, for the farmers to have trust in the technology, because also when we talk with the farmers, there's some suspicion about companies about renewable technologies because of bad quality products that exist in the market. What we want is to support these technology providers, these companies, in building their trust on the side of the end user, and also on the side of the microfinance institutions. So I really don't have any other question to be addressed by the panel.
Thanks. I see Miguel wants to respond to that. In interest of time, we only have a few minutes left according to schedule. Maybe you can go quickly, and then Samnang War, you can have maybe 30 seconds to really quickly ask your question, and we'll do a final round. So go ahead, Miguel.
I'm not going to answer. I'm actually going to add a question, because that's part of the current financing mechanism that is being proposed. And I think that the relevant question from the beginning is, can financial and technical feasibility studies and financial literacy training be considered an asset that somehow confirms or promotes the interests of banks and MFIs on a given business? Because ultimately the financing mechanism is directing financial institutions in that direction, and sort of I would say, try to understand if this new reality could create a new investment landscape ultimately, or if everybody agrees or would agree with the fact that financial institutions will still be very reliant on either guarantors or asset collateralization.
Thanks. Another good question. Last one, War Samnang, 30 seconds. Can you be concise?
Clarice, my concern is already interpreted by our previous presenter. That it's fine, thank you.
Fantastic. Okay. Who would like to respond? Financial institutions, I'm looking at you, I think.
Happy to provide first answer to the two questions. So first, relating to trust in companies, you know, I just hope that everybody has a green microfinance program in mind, where there were a lot of work done on that issue of addressing the trust of the market, addressing the quality of the product, addressing the after sales with some very complex and detailed, criteria that these solar providers had to adhere to in order to build that trust. And it made it so onerous for the technology providers that they were just not able to scale at all because of the complexity of that. So I think that the sales and distribution channels and the supply chains and procurement is key. That is the most important. Of course, it needs to be, the after sale service needs to be there in place, but it's not a huge structural demand. So we have to be careful of that balance of what we're asking these technology providers to do in light of the scale and the kind of maturity that they have today. So that's the first one. The second point, a bit relating to Miguel, and I'll put my money where my mouth is. If there are projects to finance in these renewable technologies, we're ready. Send them to us. Talk to our staff, or we'll refer to the right branches, whatever areas are there, and I'm pretty sure that the kind of products that we have today available will suit the demands as have been mentioned. Of course, the one issue which I think is critical is the collateral issue, and even though we have through a number of different mechanisms a lot of unsecured financing, so our secured portfolio is only 40%, so we have a significant amount of uncollateralized. Right, it has other forms of securities and guarantees we put in place. But if there's a guarantee that can be provided by the project in order to make the pricing more attractive and take away that pure collateral requirement, great. But even short of that, we're, I would say, 95% ready to receive and to deliver on financial products that will be adapted to the demands of those families. So I think it's just a question of, as I said before, really focusing on what those distribution channels are in order to enable those technology providers to meet those families' demands. And yes, let's do financial literacy. It will not, of course, 100%, although it will not be something that will make us more comfortable, but it will be something that we, are committed to and believe is absolutely important for just responsible access to finance across the board in Cambodia. And as far as the assets question, I think I briefly touched on that last time. There's an important legal problem in terms of having non-movable assets as collateral that needs to be looked at. Leasing can provide its services for any non-movable assets. So there's a legal option there for leasing companies who have that license in order to use the solar panel, for example, as collateral for the thing. But for MFIs, we cannot do that. We cannot take even with a complicated a scheme like was mentioned by Mr. Boone for the technology provider guarantees and then we'll buy back. There's a lot of legal problems because we've explored that. A lot of legal problems and loopholes in that, namely in terms of delinquency and what happens once the customer doesn't want to pay anymore, and what are the legal recourses that we have in that to monetize that asset. So I think we have to be very careful about that. But yes, let's do financial literacy, and yes, let's provide guarantee mechanisms to make sure that pricing and eligibility is made even more accessible and preferential for the borrowers.
Thanks. Does anyone else want to intervene on those two questions before we take a quick round of closing off? I had a birthday recently and I got a smartwatch and it just told me for the first time, you seem stressed. So I guess I'm feeling the time pressure here and people are wanting to go for the weekend. So maybe I throw out a question, which I think in a way, Yannick has already answered in some ways, and it's, are Cambodian finance institutions ready and willing to be the next impact investing catalysts? Yannick have said, we'll put our money where our mouth is. Yes. Sita, do you want to give a yes or no, why and under what conditions? You have maybe 30 seconds each.
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, I think we experience in partnership with various projects, even with the government body. under some ministry that we already work with on the project of financing to the project beneficiary. For this one, I think it's not so different from the previous one. So we think that we are happy to be a part of the project. Somehow the further discussion will be made in order to make sure and clear in terms of the project area, in terms of the criteria, term and condition, and so on. So those kind of things can be in place. And for the accessibility, I think that might be the client or the project beneficiary can call us directly at any time, or can be text us via the social media for asking the loan and so on. So that this kind of thing we might be work further, because I think from the project side, you might be want to know who are the beneficiaries that they already got a loan from PRASA and so on. So this kind of thing might be we need to talk in detail later on that. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Vatanak, do you want to go? Last words.
Well, it's been a very informative and very animated and engaging webinar. Thank you so much for all the participants who are giving us this opportunity, and especially thanks to the panelists, the financial institution, the banks. You have been provide us so much valuable information and thoughts. Definitely, we will keep engaging, and then do be proactive in terms of engaging us in some of the partnership. We will definitely take this project further based on the recommendation. And of course, I just want to wish everybody well, and then stay safe. Thank you so much.
Thanks. ARDB, shall we go to you? Are you the next impact investing and catalyst in Cambodia?
Sure, that is, you know, this project is aligned with our bank policy and business plan for supporting smallholder farmer, and mainly the women empowerment. That is our main support for rural sector development as well. So we are glad to be part in the project. Okay, thank you. Thank you for everyone.
Thanks very much. Celia, do you want a last word and some insight on role of financial institutions, maybe specific to the work you're doing?
Sure. I think everyone's kind of said what I would have intended to say, but I think it's really important to have this kind of forum where bringing together different sectors and different stakeholders. And yeah, hopefully in future conversations we can have a little bit more representation. As much as I appreciate being the woman on the panel, but yeah, maybe next time we can have a little bit more diversity, and I won't be the only white woman on the panel.
Thank you. Last word to Miguel.
Yes, I think that we have received a very, very positive feedback from financial institutions. I really hope that all that have assisted this webinar / workshop do get in touch with them, because obviously they're very interested in continuing doing what they do best. And I will just, my end note will be for the responsible borrowing, and I believe that we should think a little bit more about it. Thank you, Yannick, for bringing that up and all that it entails, but I definitely think that we should give it a second and third and fourth thoughts, because it's a very, very interesting concept within impact investing. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Then we close the panel here. Last word to UNEP, the mother of the project. Paramita, would you like to say something?
Thank you, Clarice, and thank you everyone for such an interesting and thoughtful, insightful discussions. We really enjoyed that. And of course, there are few things what I wanted to respond, but maybe it has been responded by some way or other. Few points, maybe in 1 minute, I will try to say that. Yes, renewable energy probably is expensive, but at the same time, it's not impossible to achieve that. Once we have, and several countries have already done that, we have number of examples and case studies which says that. I'll just take from my own experience in India. When it was so expensive and everyone was talking that probably it would not be possible, but there are several enabling environments which have been created which makes it possible. So if we go with the positive attitude that yes, it's possible, we need the enabling environment and we have to execute the right approach and the right instrument in place, it's definitely going to happen. And one last point, what I would like to say is we also, while implementing renewable energy projects, we should not also consider this only as a small intervention somewhere, but it's more from the, what Miguel said, it's more from the climate change perspective, it's more from the overall socioeconomic development of the country. And if you see, it's more on how can we improve the adaptive capacities of the country. Because I mean, I'm not touching on the energy security point of view from Cambodia, but that's a huge issues of all those lack of fuel diversion that's happening in Cambodia and the import dependency of Cambodia. So if you start with something, maybe the smaller one, but in a larger scale, then it will address the bigger issues that the country is facing at this moment. So probably with this, I know all of us are so positive, and all those panelists, I really like the discussions, and all those participants as well. Everyone is so positive. So we are really happy for this and looking forward for more collaborations with a more positive attitude to say that, yes, it's possible and we need the enabling environment at the right place with the right stakeholders to make it happen. So with this, I will stop here with a positive note and with a happy weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Paramita, and everyone. With this, we close and we say have a great weekend, and we look forward to the future collaboration. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.